Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Item 1.02, are there any corrections or additions to the agenda?
Yes, just we did add, if you didn't catch it, we're going to do an executive session, specifically to enter an executive session, discuss medical, financial, credit, or employment of a particular person. There was an adjustment made this afternoon.
All right, would someone move this item?
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Terry, I'm a yes.
Mr. Cordone?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DeJalorme?
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons?
Yes.
Get everybody. I think that's everybody.
And just a reminder to the public, if you have any questions or comments, you may go to our district website and utilize our email. It's clerk@fulton.cnyric.org. Are there any questions regarding, oh no, I'm not there yet, excuse me. Someone move item 1.04.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Terry, I'm a yes.
Mr. Cordone?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DeJalorme?
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons?
Yes.
Are there any questions regarding the upcoming meetings? All right.
I do have one, Robin.
Yes.
Will links to those meetings be forthcoming?
Mm-hmm.
That was you.
Thank you.
Okay. Going to turn the evening over to Superintendent Polvino.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just writing down, links will be forthcoming. I'll make sure, try to keep in my book here. Welcome. It's hard to believe we had a recess is already over and we're back in the groove again. A lot going on in the area and the communities, looking at just reopenings and things like that going on. A lot of things we're watching. We'll talk about that in a little while. First thing this evening, I wanted to draw your attention, and I will just briefly share with you and hopefully share my entire screen in 1 second here. And we will share, and we will go here. Let me know when you can see. And Robin, can you see that on the screen? All right, thank you. So just to draw your attention to the required document that came out from the state of New York, the Public Employer Health Emergency Plan. It's a requirement that the governor signed into place, I believe, at the end of October, early November. The template, which is kind of a boilerplate template with some very specific language in it, came out in early December. And what this plan is about, I think, captures it the best. We'll work you through it here in just a moment, but it's required under New York State Labor Law, Section 27C. As you can see, we've had a couple of meetings. We met on the 21st and the 28th of January. The purpose is, first thing we had to do is we had to meet as a team. The second thing we do is we share it with all of the bargaining units. We shared the draft actually yesterday at our monthly meeting. We have a number of the members of bargaining units on that team. The next step is just sharing it with you this evening. On the 9th of March, we will have a public hearing prior to the board meeting. Probably, I believe, around 5:30, we will schedule that public hearing. We'll just go through that. It's one of the requirements. We will take any information and feedback that we get, and we will bring it back to the team, any of those adjustments, and then we will bring it to the board at the second meeting in March. I believe that would be the 23rd of March as a resolution and approval. And then the state requires that we do not send it in, but we post it on the Fulton City School District website. And so that's the process. And in the plan, just to walk you through it a little bit, and you have the document, you have a listing of the members of the planning team. You've got the table of contents, which overviews the document. This really captures, this paragraph right here really captures the essence of what this is about. It requires public employers to adopt a plan for operations in the event of a declared public health emergency involving a communicable disease. The plan includes the identification of essential positions, facilitation of remote work for non-essential positions, provision of personal protective equipment, and protocols for supporting contact tracing. It continues to go through with some very specific boilerplate language, really no changes here. References the latest CDC guidance that we need to do. In here, there's a series of assumptions. You'll read about the concept of operations and what do operations mean in a school district. Mission essential functions. The team then had to go through and identify priorities in those essential functions. So we identified essential functions on page 6 under communications, health and safety, teaching and learning, child nutrition, social emotional well-being, business office and payroll, transportation, human resources, and athletics and extracurricular. We had to rate them 1 to 4. You can see number 1 being highest priorities. Here on the right-hand column, 2 and 2, 3 are the rest of the columns. We have a 1 down here with respect to technology. You'll see essential positions were identified and what the justifications were for each. That's on page 7. I'm not going to read through all of these. It's really making you familiar with what's in the document. The purpose tonight was just to introduce you to the document, and then we can ask questions at the next meeting, as well as answer any questions or address any input that comes in at on the March 9th. Go a little bit further down through, talks about reducing risk through remote work and staggered shifts on page 8. You'd continue on a little bit more, describe staggered shifts, how that may work here in the Fulton City School District as a base. Obviously, each situation is driven by the uniqueness. For example, this spring, we adjusted from in March into April. We moved to staggered shifts actually with our custodial staffs, as well as in a number of other parts of our operations. Clerical was staggered, so on and so forth. So we have done that before. There's a section on personal protective equipment. You can see that's on page 10. As it moves down through, it talks about what we're keeping on hand, and we actually have higher supplies than that, but our base minimum for 3,200 students and 650 staff talks about the 15,000 masks for adults and children, talks about disposable gloves, medical gowns, and so on and so forth, eye protection, face shields, hand sanitizer, and soap. District will be the following suppliers. They asked that we had a listing of who our base suppliers are that we've been working with. So as of the writing of this document, these are our vendors that we have been using as our primaries. We're always looking at pricing, availability, and such. Also, there's a section on staff exposures, cleaning, and disinfection in our district. Goes down through it. It mirrors very much what we do here in our district now. Talks about when there's a positive, when a staff member has a positive result, or a staff person has a negative result, so on and so forth. Works down through, there's a section on specifically cleaning and disinfecting on page 13. There's a section on employees and contractor leaves of absence, documentation of work hours and locations. Obviously, when you have adjusted schedules, staggered shifts, so on and so forth, you have to have documentation of who worked where and when and why and what they were doing. And making very clear if they're doing overtime that we know exactly who's doing what and when, so we have that documentation. And if we had contact tracing, we need to know exactly who's in the building at all times in the event that we had to do a tracing because of a contact to a positive person. And then finally, housing for essential employees. I'm not sure how applicable that could be in our district, but this is one of the components that's required as part of the plan. So if we had to, because of some type of emergency, house our essential employees, so they were maybe closer to site or whatnot, this would be the steps that we would take to be able to do that. So that's the plan in a nutshell. Are there any questions? I know that's a very brief overview. As I said, this is really to make you aware We can go through it at the next meeting if you have any questions. And as I said, we'll have the public forum prior to the next board meeting on the 9th.
Brian,
Any
has there been any conversation? I mean, I see the value in the plan and the importance for it, but there's always, it seems like potentially another unfunded mandate when I look at the costs associated to the requirements of the plan. So has there been conversation aside from the requirement of the plan that moving forward from this point when federal funding may not be available, is the state going to support this plan or any district's plan with funds?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as always, very consistent with other things we've seen, Mr. Cordone, is that once again, no funding behind it, but a requirement from the governor that came out in October. So what I would say is we're monitoring all of our PPE costs. And so what I would say is we would learn from what we've had. We know what those costs are. My guess is we'll continue to update this plan. There's no requirement to update this plan, but the way guidance changes consistently, I would say that we would look at this every couple months. We should just do a standing review. I think the other piece, you bring up a good point. One of the things that our small cities organization has been talking about is just what are those unfunded mandates that we need to keep bringing to the table? And now that you just said that, I need to bring that up in our next meeting. But I believe that's a good advocacy group for us to work with. There are power in numbers, and there's, I believe, 57 of us that would be facing this same challenge. It's a great question. But as usual, no funds behind it that I'm aware of.
Brian,
Yes.
are we having the public hearing at our next meeting?
The public hearing will be scheduled at 5:30 prior to this meeting, very similar to the way we do the budget forums.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Brian, I wondered about the PPE, not just that we have to have a 6-month supply, but storage is always an issue. So again, have we had to make accommodations to store 6 months worth of PPE?
So in one section here, where is it? All right. Number 3 here at the bottom, Ms. Griffin, on page 10, and this is there's a section on the storage and monitoring of PPE stock. Right now, you'll see how we're doing it at the present time, and that seems to be handling our current situation. We use the area designated locations from the director of athletics, who's also our COVID coordinator. And so our director of athletics, PE, and health will coordinate that right now. What I would say is we would replicate how we've been storing all the materials we do now.
What I was thinking about is that we don't have everybody in. And so we are utilizing spaces that if we get back to normal, we won't have spaces to store things.
Yeah,
so actually,
isn't he? There he is.
I'm right here. So actually, all the PPE is not being stored in classrooms. It's being stored in spaces that we've made room for, and just being able to streamline some of the maybe some of the extra inventory that we had, maybe getting rid of some of the older gymnastics mats or gymnastics equipment, and being able to streamline our storerooms. So none of that is being used in our classrooms. It is being used in space that is not currently utilized.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, great questions. Any other questions? Yeah, it's one of those mandates. I'm not sure where it came out in October, and then this was the boilerplate template that we're using. And then obviously as we move forward, I'm sure there'll be more questions, but I think right now it's complete the process in the event of a future. But when you read it, I think you'll find it's very similar to our reopening plan. There's a lot of replication in this document. There's really nothing else other than a couple of the sections. For example, the housing of essential employees. We don't have anything for that in our reopening plan. But cleaning, disinfecting, PPE, those are all big parts of our reopening plan now. So it's really a replication. I think it was because there was a feeling that there wasn't good plans in place, and there was a lot of reaction. So I think the idea behind this is to get a base plan in place that we can work from in the future. All righty. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to the extracurricular report. Dan, do you want to lead that this evening?
Yep, sure.
You
Glad
want me
to.
to drive, or would you like to drive your own engine here?
I'll be happy to drive. I have it open here, so. if
And I
you
will
want to-
stop presenting, so
There you
you
go.
may drive the ship here.
Good evening, everybody. Actually, we're going to alter the name of that presentation just a bit from extracurricular to, we're going to call it extra classroom activities, okay? So that we can be inclusive of some other opportunities for our students that aren't specifically what we'd consider extracurricular. Some of these are part of our curriculum that as we've become more adept at working with the constraints of this year, we've been able to add as part of our program. So we've invited Mr. Kopani, Mrs. Parker, Mr. Bells to talk specifically about those opportunities within their areas. All of these opportunities certainly relate to those original return to learning goals of in-person instruction for as many students as we can, quality remote programming, and to constantly reflecting on our plans and our opportunities and expanding whenever possible. And really providing opportunities that are both in-person and remote as well, as we'll see. And also, these opportunities really encompass each of those priority areas as well. In considering what we're able to offer at every point of the year, health and safety is the first consideration. Being sure that and striving to offer as much or as close as we can to what we typically do for our students, because we know how important these opportunities are for our students' social and emotional well-being. And also that these opportunities are part of a complete and comprehensive and well-rounded academic and instructional program. It's not just about what we consider achievement in terms of classwork. Student achievement, of course, relates to all of those areas where our students are empowered to show what they can do and what they know and what their talents are. So with that, I'm going to invite Mrs. Parkhurst to speak to what those opportunities include at GRB.
All right. Hi, everybody. Here you can see these are the clubs that we have students involved with this year in our virtual model. So you can see the club and the approximate membership of students who participate on a regular basis. So Student Senate, you can see 30. We have Hope Club. Hope stands for Helping Other People Everywhere. LOTE, which is now called World Language Club, our language club. FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America, and they actually, FBLA just had their first virtual competition. Typically they go to a convention center in Rochester and compete in their specialty areas against other students in the region, and they did it virtually and did a nice job. We had several students take away medals and prizes from that. Our Raiders Den, they are, our Raiders Den, they're working on right now getting working with our local businesses and learning how to sell apparel and other items online. So it's a great learning experience for our students virtually. Chess Club, Gaming Club, sometimes it's called, has really taken off this year in the virtual world. You can see we have a lot of students, 26, interested in Chess Club. Science Club, Library Club, and each of the classes. Now I'm sitting in the dark.
Energy efficiency.
Each of our classes, it was pitch black in here. Each of our classes, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior officers meet with their class advisor on a regular basis. They are mostly focused on fundraising for activities that we are anxiously awaiting for us to begin. And here are some examples, some pictures just to show you what that the students are involved at this time. Up at the top, and this is the first two photos on the left are stem from our Student Senate. And all of the ideas that Student Senate comes up with comes right from the students. So in the top photo, the kids wanted to put together some gift baskets and donate them back right around the holiday time in November to the Child Advocacy Center. And that was their holiday community service project. In the photo on the bottom, they wanted to do a drive, a supply drive to the Oswego County Animal Shelter. And just of note with our Student Senate officers, oh good, Reagan just joined. Perfect timing. Reagan is, I thought I just saw her name pop up. She's actually one of our Student Senate participants, so she can help me out. But one of the positions, officer positions for Student Senate, is community connections, with that role focusing on connecting the work of our Student Senate with community agencies. And again, these ideas come right from the students themselves. On the right, you can see a screenshot of from the chess club, from their Google Classroom stream. And this at the top, it just showed one of the students posted a video game that he played with Mr. Fasulo. Mr. John Fasulo is the chess club advisor. And you can see the feedback that John gave to the student. Awesome, nice job passing in the beginning to set up your defense, which paid off for later in the game. Also, nice job keeping constant pressure on his queen. Brings back memories of playing chess. Once you marched your pawn down to his back row, trading queens was a great decision. You actually promoted 2 pawns to queen, so that's impressive. It's always good to know when to trade pieces or not, and you did that effectively. So it's interesting to watch, a teacher give feedback on a good game of chess here. And rounding out the activity happening, it was exciting to bring in our students in performing groups just this past Monday. We just started that this week. And you can see the number of students participating. Again, we just started that yesterday. And the number of students not yet ready to join us here in the building. Really the goal of having our performing groups come in on Mondays is so that they don't have to be split into the A group and the B group, which our performing groups are, with our new schedule, they are practicing, but only according to their A group or B group. So hopefully this attendance will grow each Monday as we get our performing groups together. But it was exciting to see our musicians finally come together this week.
Donna, is that a cross section of the entire group, or are there strategic groups made? Do you know what I mean in terms of the performance groups coming into the building? I mean, is it all woodwinds? Is it a particular section of instrument? How are those decisions made?
No, it's all of the above. They're all together. And so Mr. Cavanis, once he gets, yesterday he spent the time organizing the students, but once they get going, he'll take the jazz ensemble and work with them for a bit while the concert band and wind ensemble. The band students are all spaced out in our auditorium. And so that's all of our band students. And then you can see orchestra and choir. So it's all of them.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And actually next month, March, is Music in Our Schools Month, and we'll be inviting Mrs. Almeter to join us actually for both meetings. She's going to share a bit more about what's occurring with the music program this year, goals for next year, and we'll be inviting some students to perform for us as well. Mr. Kopani, what's happening at the junior high?
All right, at the junior high, we're only running 3 clubs right now. We have our Yearbook Club, which has been doing a lot of work trying to figure out how we are going to modify and publish and reduce the price of our yearbook so it's available to all students. Obviously, we're a little restricted with the photos that we have, given the environment that we're learning in. Newspaper, we run our newspaper club where they decide on the stories they're going to create the stories, they compile and edit the newspaper, and then it is posted on our morning homeroom announcements, which is reviewed with all students every week with each cohort. And then student council has been doing an excellent job of trying to engage students virtually. The first event they held was a trivia night. Mrs. Pratt and Miss Gardner are my student council facilitators. And then they had a paint night, which we got a lot of excellent feedback. They spent their Friday night painting with the kids. And I heard from a few parents who are just incredibly happy that they're doing something to get kids more engaged and connecting, even if it's just in a virtual environment. And they are currently working on fundraising, creating an event to fundraise for the Fulton Dog Park. So the three clubs have been doing an excellent job of getting as many kids interested as possible. And again, trying to engage kids with the restricted environment that we're dealing with. We're also bringing kids in on Monday for small group lessons. I believe we have right now between orchestra and band just about 15 to 20 kids that are coming in. But we're doing them in the afternoon, similar to GRB, where we're doing individual lessons, small group lessons, and just trying to get kids. These are for online only kids, and just trying to get kids in the building and again engaged with some in-person music instruction. And I heard from Mrs. Foster yesterday, who was just incredibly happy and thankful for the opportunity to finally see some of these kids who she's never met the entire year.
Thanks, Mr. Kapani.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hey,
it was
Mr.
great
Can I
to see
ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I saw in the Junior Raider News that one of the students is looking for a teacher to help facilitate a chess club. Any success there yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
But seeing all the success at the high school, maybe after this we'll have a few volunteers.
I hope so. Thank you.
We're also looking for a history club. Mr. Kaprosky is working to get a few members and to create a history club as well. So we're trying to expand.
Great.
And Mr. Ells is here, not in his.
I have a question.
Oh, sure, please.
I was just wondering what's going on with drama. I know there had been some talk early in the year about a virtual program.
Yes, Mr. Briggs is in the process of, he is talking with us about a couple of different options to be performed in the spring. So we're having initial conversations about what that can look like.
Okay.
And I have one quick question about the kids coming in on Mondays. Are we providing the transportation for all of that to occur?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Ells, can you update us on athletics?
So we are in our third week of competitions, our fourth or fifth week, depending on the sport, of our winter activities. As you can see, we have our boys varsity and JV basketball team with 14 and 17 players on it. The freshman team has 19 players. And then we have two modified junior high basketball teams with 12 and 13. Our swimming right now is rounding out around 27 swimmers. And then our hockey, you see there's a split number. We have 12 Fulton students, and then it'll be 11 students from other, or I'm sorry, 10 students from other districts, giving us the 22 number. On the girls' side of things, we have varsity basketball with 15, JV with 9. And then we have the two teams at the junior high with 11 and 10, cheerleading with 13, and then bowling. Actually, that's both boys and girls, which will give us 15 bowlers total. Like I said, we're off and going. Some of our teams are finishing up swimming and bowling. They got a little earlier start, being a lower moderate risk sport. So they had a few extra weeks upon some of the higher risk sports. So they're going to be ending up either this weekend or early next week.
I have a question regarding, we said we weren't going to move forward with indoor track, but I've heard that a number of schools in the county are doing indoor track outside. And
Yes.
so the question has been posed to me, and I'm asking tonight
Yes.
if you could address that.
Yep. We have not looked into indoor track outdoors because we are offering cross country. While I know that indoor track covers some other field events, most of the girls that are training right now for our indoor track are mostly our distance runners. So we will be providing a running program for them in our fall 2 season, which most of the other schools had the fall 1 season. So they ran cross country at that time.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Ells. I appreciate it.
You're
And
welcome.
I just want to say great job of streaming too of all the contests. Very good. And I hope we can do that with our music also.
Well, with Tim Wilson, I think he can accomplish anything, as I've seen throughout the week. With underwater cameras, and he's been running all over our district trying to get our games and our links up there, and he's been doing a great job. Running into a few speed bumps here and there with low connectivity, I believe is the word that they're using. With certain sites, but we're really trying to get things up and going and trying to, even if we can't get a live streamed, he's able to get the games recorded and being able to post right after the event is over. So that has been, actually, I have 2 events going on my other screen over here. So it's been very nice for people to watch, different spectator events, and then actually to go back and watch the events later on has been nice.
The numbers also, if you look in the bottom corners, not on this screen, but when you're watching the live stream, the numbers are unbelievable. I was watching 130 other people the other night, the boys basketball. I noticed numbers in the 70s today for the JV game this afternoon. The modifieds had 40 something at one point this afternoon. It's great because I can literally walk in and actually see what's going on and seeing our students and coaches perform. So, but the numbers, I think it's something, if anything we've learned, and Chris and I were talking about this the other day, is that the streaming is bringing so many more people into the fold as far as being able to watch and participate even from afar. It's just great to see those numbers of people watching our kids. So, and I look at the bottom of the screen in some of the other districts, I'll watch our kids on the away. Our numbers are very solid compared, and in some cases better. But our screen, our camera at the high school in particular, that is all auto. It's all auto. So it's following the ball and the movement on the court. And I believe Mr. Ells has fielded some questions from other districts about how that works and operates. So.
Yeah, and I have no clue how it operates. I just have it up there, and that's a great question for Tim and Dom to answer that. But it is working great to be able to, have the camera actually moves. It's robotic, so we don't have to have anybody there manning the camera. So it's really nice. So.
And Chris, about fall 2 sports, the signups.
Yep. So fall 2 signups, they're going up. They'll be up by the end of the night tonight. So kids will be able to sign up. That's going to start off on March 8th. That's going to run through April 24th. We have football, cheerleading, volleyball, boys and girls cross country, boys soccer, girls soccer, and girls varsity tennis. So we will be offering, the same levels that we have before with varsity, JV, and modified, with the exception of boys and girls soccer. We will not be able to have a modified program as we have in the past, just due to the fact that no other schools are running a modified soccer program. So with that being said, we will definitely come up. I've talked to, both coaches. We will come up with something for our student athletes, so they're able to get out there and at least kick the ball around and be able to set up some short-sided games of, a 5v5 soccer, and being able to get out there and at least get some inter-squad scrimmages in with our kids, so they have an activity to do after school.
Thanks, Mr. Eld.
You bet.
Mrs. Parkhurst and Mr. Kopani. And as we've done at other kind of checkpoints in our in our experience with remote learning and hybrid learning, new types of experiences, it's time to ask our community how we're doing. And this evening we've sent out our mid-year survey where we ask many of the same questions that we've asked a few times now in relation to health and safety and social emotional well-being and instruction. This is important to us as we've made some changes, as we've done that, reflecting and evolving in terms of what we're offering. It's always very interesting and useful to us to get that feedback from the community, and our community has consistently been fantastic in terms of providing that feedback. In this edition of the survey, we also ask in an open-ended way, what more would you like to see?
Dan, can you slide down to the bottom?
Sure.
So that's an open-ended question, allowing us to really get feedback. This is a great opportunity for us. There's a lot going on in our region, and so we're closely monitoring all the guidance around us. I was on a small cities call yesterday with a group of superintendents, along with New York State Education Commissioner Rosa. It was a great conversation, and a number of the things that we pointed out were the inconsistencies in the guidance that even from county to county that is being seen, and the importance that when they are having discussions at the state level, that the consistency and guidance is really important for us. And obviously there are a lot of things in the news and things like that out there, and a lot of inquiries going on about what's happening in your district. I got a call today on how are you handling vaccinations and the numbers and knowing how many staff, and what came out from the governor yesterday. And I said, I haven't even seen that guidance yet, because there is none that has come out. There's a executive order, but not how it's going to be collected or what that's going to look like. It looks like it'll be part of the dashboard. But that's the kind of thing where it gets out and there's questions happening so quickly and reactive. If anybody's learned anything with me, I tend to be rather conservative, and so what we're trying to do is make sure what's going on, what the guidance is, and we're looking at ways, and as you heard this evening, ways to explore and expand opportunities. There are districts that have not had kids in at all in 7th through 12th grade, and they're getting those kids in for the first time. We've been doing that. So we're looking and exploring, but we really want clear, definitive guidance. There's nothing more frustrating than to get, interpretations. What we need is really clear guidance. So we will be, when we come back on March 9th, we should have hopefully some things seem to be evolving in a lot of the areas and regions around us. It is very interesting to hear from the small city supers from across the state, the similarities that we all have in wanting just more clear guidance that shouldn't be up to interpretation. For example, we made, and I will continue to reinforce, thank you to our board, we from the get-go made mask wearing an important piece of our reopening plan. It was from the get-go. That was a should that we made a must. And I think it was a good move. A number of districts, made some changes when they saw their data and things like that. I think we did a good job with that. But there are other things. I wish they'd come out with another must and should in February of 2021. It'd be nice to have an updated must should list. I think that would be very beneficial. So it's one of the things that we brought up yesterday when we met with the commissioner. So we'll keep you apprised of what's going on with that. And Dan went through the survey. So we hope that in the past, we've been getting 300 to 500 responses within the first 24 hours. So hopefully we get that kind of response tonight. And we felt that the open-endedness would help really our families and community members really provide some great input with that. And then we will disaggregate that, and we can share an update on that survey at the next meeting. The other piece I wanted to bring up, and I'll share, one of our board members had a question at the last meeting, and we were going through, and I talked with her today, Ms. Lyons. Thank you for reminding me. Wanted to share a little bit of an update on the transportation. I'll share for just a moment. I want to take us back to just to kind of give us a little bit of a reference point here. Back in October, Mr. Lisi described, can I get a thumbs up, Ms. Griffin, if you can see that? Can we see? Yep. Okay, good. Thank you. We had referenced, so what we did was in January, we realized that we wanted to expand opportunities at G. Ray Bodley High School in particular, because we were looking at the coursework around electives and things like that. So to do that, one of the things that we looked at was transportation. Well, back in October, we actually talked about how we were using our TransFinder, and you can see the goals at the bottom, which were identify efficient routing protocols, maximizing available busing, increasing instructional time, and decreasing late drop-offs and pickups. So the reason why I wanted to reference that was that when we expanded the day at GRA Bodley, things were going well here at the junior high, so we didn't want to make that adjustment here because the teaming concept and it was really working well here. So what we've done is we had to take the 30 runs, and I believe there's 30, give or take 1 or 2, and the 30 buses, and how do you take 30 buses and turn them into 2 separate runs? So TransFinder allowed us to do that. So we used the same transportation amounts to be able to service both having a junior high dismissal at 12:30, 12:35, and then a dismissal at the high school at 1:15. And I will say it's worked very well. Mr. Lisi, is there anything you'd add to that? Or did I capture that essence pretty well?
You pretty much got it. Just to focus on the goals below, those were our goals in October, and we've met most of those. That was kind of what we were looking at trying to do.
Yep. So I just wanted to reference that because I thought it was important because it brought it back to, we say we're going to use the, different ways to be efficient. We learned a lot with this, and I look forward to continue use of the TransFinder program. We went really all in with it, and it really did help us look at some efficiencies and resources. And obviously it's something we're always looking at and looking forward to work with our partners at Golden Sun and our own transportation department. And hopefully that'll help us with lots of efficiencies, whether it's time, funding, so on and so forth. So I just wanted to address that. Ms. Lyons, does that address your question?
It sure does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the reminder because I did not catch that in my notes from last time. So thank you. All righty. I think I stopped sharing. The next thing, if there's no other question about the extracurricular, thank you to the team and all the work that's going on. We're looking forward to our continued growth in those areas. As you can see, we're expanding and we'll continue to build and evolve as we're allowed to really expand and get hopefully guidance from the state. For example, 12 feet for instrumental music. It's about time to break that down a bit, I think. That may be one of those areas. Same thing for physical education. So, so on and so forth, because there's a lot of questions when you juxtapose athletics that are high contact, and yet we can't, play our instruments, or we can't be having phys ed, or we can't be closer in the classrooms. And so looking forward to some more clear guidance, so we're not having those pieces that are kind of playing off one another. The third item on our agenda this evening is the change to the instructional calendar. Simply March 11th and 12th, we had set aside for conferences. However, we hadn't really finalized what we were doing, but we realized that we want to have our kids in full days, and we're in the process of developing a way to address our student-led conferences or our conferencing throughout the course of the spring. So we're getting creative with that, working closely with our teachers organization and our administrators to develop something that's meaningful, purposeful, and could make an impact for kids. And so that's what we're gonna do. So the March 11th and 12th will be full days of school as opposed to early releases, which is probably something we should have looked at before, as we are already adjusted a superintendent's conference day and previously. So that's on your agenda this evening. Are there any questions with respect to that? Alrighty. Ms. Nichols, I'll have you join me this evening. I'll drive here for a minute. Let me go back on here and get to presenting again here. 1 second. Where are we here? Right here. And share and tax cap. So Ms. Nichols, are you on?
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
With the screens the way they work tonight, it doesn't show everybody at the same time. So I could see about half the group. So when you talk, you come on. That's how it works. So I'm going to have one of the things, it's tax cap time of the year. This is a required process that we have to, I believe we have to upload by what, March 1st on this, Nicholas?
Yes. Yes.
If you could run through. So this is our property tax cap for 21-22. Ms. Nichols.
All right. Well, this form should start looking familiar to some of you. Same calculation that we have to do every year in February. And basically, it just tells us how much we can increase, that we're allowed to increase the tax levy by. So we start with the current tax levy for this year, the $21,613,000. And there's a tax-based growth factor that's applied to it. And then we're allowed to add back our pilots from the 2021 year. That $624,000 is the budgeted amount that we had. And then we have to do away with the capital tax levy exclusion we had last year. Then we also apply an allowable levy growth factor, which is again provided by the state. Take out the pilots that we are anticipating for this year, the $275,000, and we come up with our tax levy before exclusions. So you see that's at 3.04%, or a $657,000 increase. If you'll remember, the Sunoco Addis property was on a pilot and is no longer on a pilot, so it's being returned to the tax rolls. So because we lost that roughly $350,000 pilot, that is allowed to go back towards our tax levy. So that's why there's such a large increase this year. Down below that, we are allowed also, we have a capital levy, which has to do with the timing of when we receive building aid for, versus our debt service payments. So when that's added on, the permissible increase, including that, is just over 4%. So the board could decide to go as high as $880,000 as an increase. So again, just the formula that we have to submit each year. And after this, I believe we're presenting some of the, you have the first look at the budget and what some of the potential tax levies would mean on the revenue side.
Kathy, do you want to do the percentages first, or do you want to do the roll budget? Which are you more comfortable doing first?
Well, I'm thinking that the board's probably more interested in, what the budget, our first pass at the budget looks like.
Okay.
So you've got it up there right now. If you take a look at just our first blush at the budget, we're bringing you a 3.9% increase over the current year's budget, just over $2.9 million. And the last column does show the areas that have the change. Overall, we used about a 3% increase in salaries from the budgeted amount. Benefits have been increased about 4.7%. Most of that we put into the medical and dental area. It's an increase overall of $833,000. Debt service has changed a little bit this year. So for 21-22, we have the interest on the bond anticipation note that we have to pay off. And also we have a new energy performance contract that will be on the books. So debt service overall is going up $369,000. We also included in the technology area, we increased that budget by $372,000 with most of that going into the BOCES lines, realizing that there'd be technology needs and probably another Chromebook lease. And then also for PPE, we took a look at the operations and maintenance area, and we increased that by 184,000. And some of that increase is for, the continuation of spending funds on PPE. So overall, we're looking at now a budget of $76,684,000.
Kathy, I noticed on the one line, the social work services, a reduction. I'm wondering if you can tell me about that projection, given that.
And actually, that has more to do with how we budget our counselors, our social workers, and our psychologists, and our guidance people. So we really aren't, when you take all of those together, we really aren't reducing any area. It's just people are licensed differently, and sometimes where we have to budget them plays out a little bit differently from year to year. So we really aren't making any reductions in there.
Okay, I just want to say that I would be concerned if, given that we have had students that have been disengaged for a year. Some
absolutely.
I think that we certainly should not. We're going to need more help in that area.
Right. Absolutely. And this was, and I should have thought of that. I was going off of where our budget lined up with our spending this year. So I was making the assumption that having the same people, I was going to have to adjust where I had coded the funds.
Right. So our school home liaisons, for example, are either certified as school counselors or certified as school social workers. One year we had 3 social workers and 3 counselors in those positions. And this year we have 4 counselors and 2 social workers. So the role is the same, but the certifications are different.
Thank you both.
That is a great question, Dave. And actually, what I should say is this reflects rolling everything forward. This is not a reduction of anything. This is rolling everything forward, no reductions in any areas. It's really maybe looking at our current spending, making some adjustments like Ms. Nichols indicated along with Ms. Geithner, but this reflects no adjustments in staffing. This is like we take everything in 2021 and turn it into 21-22. These and then what we can do is provide you a bulleted list of the pieces that Kathy has. We'll get the email from her right now. We can provide those in a bulleted list, the assumptions that were utilized to project those numbers. But it's a great question. And thank you, Dave, because I should have put that out there in the first place. This was roll forward, everything the same. So thank you.
No worries.
And I just kind of jumped the gun and made a few adjustments, knowing I was going to have to do that as we got further into this.
So it's pretty similar to what you would have seen in other years. And then the other piece we did, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at with the revenues. So Kathy, if you want to work us through what we did, just to give you in the end, kind of what you're going to see. So you'll see the first one is a 0% levy increase. The second page is if we did a 1% levy increase. This is about revenues. The third sheet is a 2%. And the fourth sheet is if we went to the 3.04. Remembering that, and when you look at this, I want you to really draw attention to the federal COVID-19 money. So if you look at our state aid runs, yeah, it looks like we had $4 million or so. Here's the bottom line. That's over 2 years. So you have to, when we listen to Rick Timms and we're talking with other, higher level people that do this, across the state where they really dig into this and look at these numbers, the recommendation is to use half of those stimulus funds because the other half is projected for 22-23. And that's a misnomer in that budget because the actual state budget, when you really look at the numbers, there's $1.7 billion less in state aid that's generated by the state. It's backfilled with $6 billion from the federal government, meaning that federal government monies coming in are one-shot deals. They're one-times. So that in 23-24, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that's the year 23-24 is when you're going to have a fiscal cliff. Would that be right, Ms. Nichols?
Yes.
So you want to talk about that a little bit of what we're looking at here?
All right. We took the state aid information just, off the runs. And as Mr. Palvino indicated, we took Rick Tim's advice and put just half of the stimulus there. So that would give us the state aid amount of $52,500,000. Things to note there again, same foundation aid as we have this year, which is the same as last year. And then with the services aid, which was combining all those different expense-driven aids together, Fulton would actually lose $416,000 by the way they grouped them together. So just wanted to keep that in mind. The other interesting thing, and we talked about this already, was the governor put the STAR reimbursement on there as a state aid, and then used his takeaway, the local funding adjustment, to take it out, and then it would be filled with stimulus aid. Again, remember, STAR is actually part of our levy. It's just paid by the state as opposed to the homeowners. Then down below are other revenues. This is about $350,000 lower than I would have had in prior years because I had to take the Sunoco Addis pilot out of there. And then there's the tax levy, same 0% increase, same as what we currently have. Right now we're showing no use of reserves or fund balance. So with the proposed budget that we just had shown to you, you'd have a shortfall of $1,072,000 that we would have to make up either in, decreases to the budget, or by using reserves, or by using some fund balance. So that's the first example. Then all these others just basically make the change. If you put a 1% increase on the levy, what we would have to raise would be $855,000. Once again, either using reserves, fund balance, or changing the budget in some way. And then a 2% showing a shortfall of almost $640,000. And then going to the maximum, you'd have a shortfall of $414,000 with this first pass of the budget. Any questions that I can help with?
So this is very consistent with what we've done in the past, how we show multiple levels of where our revenues at this time based on the executive budget. It's taking into consideration some of that guidance that we're getting around the federal COVID-19 supplemental, as Kathy pointed out. And then in past budgets, the board has asked that what it would look at 0%, 1%, 2%, 3%, so you have an idea of what that would look like. Obviously, the next piece, of the process is we start looking at, what are those things to look at those numbers. And we all know that April 1st really is the most important date. There's a lot of advocacy going on. There's a lot of advocacy around the services aid. I don't think there's an advocacy group for education that's not really voicing in on the combined services aid. And you can see for Fulton and a lot of high needs districts, this is an area where combining the services is not a positive for us. And it's not good for any school district, but for high poverty districts, I think you're going to see that number is significantly higher because we're so dependent, and our percentage of monies coming back to our district and reimbursement are much higher. So that's an important piece because our wealth ratio, we're 0.31, I think it is. We're one of the poorest districts in the region, I believe, behind, I think we're third poorest in I think it's 3 or 4 county area. We are one of the poorest districts. And so that drives some higher numbers for us. But in this case, that doesn't help us. That actually, we lose $416,000 in this case. So we wanted to provide that for you at this point in time. Any questions?
Brian, so if we were looking at going to the limit, the 3.04%, you're still looking at going back and having to reduce our expenditures to get there.
if we made no adjustments to this budget, everything stayed the same, rolled forward with the anticipations that we made for the 76,684, we would still be 414,000 short if we went to the maximum tax of 3. Well, actually, we can go to 4, but we went to 3 on here, the 3.04. And that's correct. We would have 414. Obviously, one of the things for the last 2 years, and thank you to our board, we have not used fund balance and reserves, and because of that, we are as about as poised as we can be going in with our reserves and fund balance full, going into a time where we know in 23, 24, unless some very interesting things happen, that there will be a fiscal cliff unless the federal government continues to provide funding. Or let's say that $15 billion comes to New York State. The best thing that could happen for schools is for state dollars to be filling schools' coffers and federal dollars to be taking care of other types of things that can be addressed. That would be the best case scenario, obviously, because then we wouldn't have the fiscal cliff.
Right. So your next step when you meet with your committee, where do you plan on going? Your next steps with your committee?
So I think the next steps for the committee, we may identify 2 or 3 areas that we want to have a conversation with them about. Obviously, I believe one of the challenges that we're going to be facing, Mr. Cordone alluded to it a few minutes ago around the social emotional mental health types of issues that we have, that kids are going to have. We're going to have kids that may arrive in our schools that haven't been inside our schools since March of 2020, whether it's towards the end of this year or it's in September, depending on how things kind of work over the next few weeks, months, days. That's a piece. We also know that we're going to have kids that have academic gaps coupled with social emotional gaps. So we need to look at some possibilities. Are there things that we need to build into this budget at the same time that we take things out, to try to balance what are the primary needs right now. So those would be the types of tasks that we'll be doing over the next couple of weeks and months.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I just wanted to say one thing too. Just remember, the county and the city had no tax increase. We have to look at that too. A lot of people are hurting. Businesses, people, families. So let's keep that in mind.
Yep. And I think we constantly, and I think we do, I agree. It's a difficult challenge that we have before us. This is a difficult one to forecast out 3 to 5 years because there's so much federal monies involved in this budget provided by the executive. But we understand, I think every year we take into consideration we never we seem to always provide what our kids need. And I think when you look back at what we've done, we've had relatively modest increases in our programming. The example at our last meeting, the drone program, we've been getting a lot of feedback and inquiries from families, I understand, wanting their kids to participate in that program in the future. The availability of college courses, but also the availability of all of those social, emotional, and academic supports because we have such a wide range of kids. So I think we try to be fiscally responsible while also making sure that we address the kids' needs. But point taken, Mr. Crandall. Thank you.
Brian, are we inviting input from our staff for what it will take to return to school? Our students to return, 5 days a week, and where we're going to have to shore up gaps from this learning environment of the past year, and what impact that may have on the budget?
Yes. So we're having we're having a meeting with our principals tomorrow. And then I believe next steps after that will be how do we get feedback from each of those buildings about what they're feeling that their primary needs are from their staffs and from their from the administrative teams in those buildings. And then making some adjustments, looking at our models. Are there ways to tighten up our models in different areas? Be efficient, but as you said, do we need to repurpose some things? That type of thing to better serve the needs of our students and to support our teachers in the classroom. It's going to be a different re-engaging experience than any of us have ever had before. It's a great point. Yes, the answer is yes. Okay, any other questions? Alrighty, and then the final part of the budget aspect is to provide the January update. Let me see if I can, oop, that's the calendar. I know it's here, maybe it's down here, 1 second. Right here. Ms. Nichols and Mr. Lisi, this is the monthly, the second meeting of the month. We have been doing our monthly finance report. This is the January 2021 report. Ms. Nichols and Mr. Lisi.
Mr. Baldwino, can you possibly put that in presentation mode because it's very small?
Can I possibly make, I'll tell you what, do you want me to come up and so you can drive it? Because I'm not sure. If I do that, it'll knock me out. I did that before.
Go to
We can
slide.
try. If I go off, I'll slide back in, folks. It kind of kicked me out last time.
There you go. Right from the beginning. There you go. Thank you.
Well, I'm completely in the dark. So.
So are we. All right. I guess go back to where you were. Sorry about that.
I am going to turn it back to you. See, I am completely in the dark now. I can't even get back to my screens. All right, 1 second. There we go. All right. I think I am not sharing anymore. Mr. Lisi, would you like to have your program back?
Sure. I don't have that up right now. It'll take me a minute.
All right. So on your slides, why don't you talk through it? Kathy, if you want to speak to it, can you speak to it or?
Certainly. What we're going to show you is just one page that takes last year versus this year, shows you, through January, and then through the end of, then also compares the end of last year to the budget this year. And it breaks it down, it looks at revenues and it looks at expenditures. And it'd be easier once it's up there. But we showed you this a month ago. We showed you a few more slides, but just basically the same idea. Revenues are broken down into local, which would be mainly the taxes and the pilot payments, and then state funding and federal funding. And it just shows, where we stand this year as a percent of the budget and how we compare to where we were last year at the same time.
I apologize. I don't have a copy of it, Mr. President.
Kathy, if I'm looking at this, then our local revenue, we have which we can do in installments. It looks like we have less than 2%.
Remember, with the tax levy, we book in full in August when you approve it.
Right.
So this isn't collections. It would be
okay.
Okay. It would be the levy and yeah. So the levy would be there in full. So the difference, if you were looking at the local, there's also a few little things in there too, like the BOCES refund would be considered local. The NISMIC. Okay, so there's a few more items in there.
I was just trying to figure out why it reads 98.82%.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah. It's a small amount, but it's in there.
So the fluctuation is in what we estimate in our estimate of our local share.
Yes.
Because some of it is guesswork.
Yeah. Calculated guesswork.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why that's why the fluctuation is because you can't nail down like the BOCES refund.
Right. Something like that, especially.
Right.
Especially.
It's a good educated guess. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. That sounded wonderful. Okay. And but I mean, we're in good shape, I'd say, from looking at this. And if you have a chance to just go through it, if you see anything that you might have questions on. Under expenditures, I just want to, mention that the salaries really year to date are showing that we're a bit under where compared to where we were last year. And again, I think we talked about this a little bit, like we're not using instructional subs the same way that we did before. There he is, he's got it. You know, but there's a few, and it's kind of sprinkled across the whole budget. You know, maybe drivers and aides having you know, and pretty much everyone just not having any extra hours, let me say. So it's kind of holding it down a little bit.
Can you see it full screen?
I can see it.
Great.
All right, but again, the box that's to the left is the prior year. So you see the when it says prior year, that is the through the month of January, year to date, and then prior year actual is the full year. And then in the box that's to the right, current year to date is through January, and then it compares it to our annual budget. But when you look at it, the area that I was really looking at was salaries and benefits. Now, of course, benefits will be lower if salaries are lower typically, but also we are having a more favorable health insurance year. So that certainly helps that. And then some of the other differences are also timing, you know, when we do make purchases, when a lot of these are not recorded as expenditures until we actually make payment. So any questions or anything that we can clarify for next time? We did try to shorten this up a little bit, but still down below the bar graphs are the comparison. The red is the prior year, just kind of showing us where we are compared, you know, last year to this year.
So there was some information at the last meeting. So by doing it this way, it pulls it into one page. We're trying to make it we're always asked to keep it as simple as possible. Does this work for you as a board? This is our second kind of tightening it up, and does this work better? Okay. Well, the good news is it's looking pretty good this time of year at this point. So.
Okay.
All right. If there are no other questions, we incorporated the athletics into the previous report. I think we're in good shape. We're getting great feedback. I do need to share that our clinics with the Department of Health continue to be very strong. The feedback Mr. Ells has been providing me is that things are going extremely well and smooth, and I'm glad that as a district we're working so closely with the Department of Health to be able to provide those services not only to our staff but many in the community that are partaking in those clinics. Is there anything you'd add to that, Chris, or does that capture it?
That really does capture it. I just know that the Department of Health talks about how well our facilities are, how well maintained they are, how clean they are, how the staff, the custodial staff that is here, and how accommodating they are. So they really enjoy coming here and being able to offer this service to our county.
So thank you to Chris and all of our staff that's helped working on that. If you've been one of the members, I'm sure you've seen our clinic firsthand. So thank you. And with that, that's the conclusion of the superintendent's report this evening, Ms. Griffin.
Thank you. I would like to ask my colleagues if you would be interested in batching items 4.01 through 4.03.
Move it.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion on any of those items? Mrs. Periyama, yes.
Okay, Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeJalorme,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons.
Yes.
Mrs. Applegore doing two, I believe. Did she or no?
I don't think she joined.
See her.
Sorry, thought I saw her.
Okay. Would someone move item 5.01?
Move it.
Second?
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry? Or, I'm a yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeJalorme,
Yes.
Mrs. excuse me, Cooper,
Yes.
and Mrs. Lyons.
Yes.
Item 5.02.
Move it.
Second?
Any discussion? And you should have had an updated management letter regarding the corrective action plan. All right, Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeJalorme,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
and Mrs. Lyons.
Yes.
Are you interested in batching 6.01 through 6.05?
Yes.
Move it.
Second?
Is there any discussion on any of these items? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeJalorme,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
and Mrs. Lyons.
Yes.
Brings us to board forum. So, Mr. DeJalorme, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I don't have much. Just want to thank everybody for their presentations and the updates. I like the financial reports coming in as they are, and thank you for making them easier for us to read. Thank you.
Mrs. Lyons.
I agree with everything Mr. DeJalorme said. Thank you.
Mr. Crandall.
I agree with everything that Nick and Mrs. Lyons said. That's it.
Thank you. Mrs. Cooper.
Yep, just two small things. So, Mr. Carroll, I was just curious about the survey. When does that survey go through that we're sending out to families?
When does that go through?
Well, I know it was not today, but like, when are you looking for an end date for that?
That's a good question. We actually didn't assign an end date. At present, we already have 214 responses. I've got it open now. Within the first few hours, we tend to get the bulk of our responses. So what we'll do after a few days, as we see the responses start to trickle off, we'll send out a reminder and give folks another opportunity to respond. We'll keep it open about a week and give people plenty of time after a reminder or two to make sure everyone's had a chance.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And then the last thing is discussing the budget. I am on the budget committee, but I will be leaving, so I won't be able to attend our next budget committee or the regular board meeting. But I just wanted to reiterate Mr. Crandall's thoughts about families in our community. Many families lost their jobs, businesses closed, small businesses are struggling. Before we move forward, I just want to reiterate, we really need to keep that in mind. And then that's it. Thanks everybody for their presentation.
Mr. Cordone.
Yeah. Again, thanks for the presentations. I'm glad that we're having conversation and presentation about opportunities for our students. I have a senior and a junior, and much of their high school experience has been very disrupted, as many others have, by the pandemic. And so I'm wondering, and I'm not looking for an answer to this, but I'm just asking the question regarding the possibility for our seniors to have some kind of social event. They missed a prom. There's not really a plan yet for a senior dinner dance and this year's junior class as well. So I'm just wondering, as those class officers are meeting and anyone else working with them, if they are working on any plans potentially as the restrictions loosen up. Thanks. That's it.
All righty. And I want to take a moment and also thank all of our staff that works to make the clinic at the high school a success for the community. I know that a lot of folks in our community have appreciated not having to travel far to get those vaccinations. And I've heard nothing but compliments from community members as they've gone into the building and discovered that it is very clean and well cared for. I want to thank everyone that's involved for getting our kids active. I've heard positive feedback about the live streaming. I've heard positive feedback just because our kids are able to do more beyond the school day and allow them some social time. It's been very important for them, and you all deserve kudos for making that happen. I know a lot of work went into it. It looks simple, but I know that it's not. So that said, everyone keep your eye on what's going on in Albany, and feel free to reach out and share your concerns with our elected officials so that they understand what you're thinking and feeling about our budget process and our needs. It's always helpful. Your voice is important. And the same for anyone listening. If you have a desire to email your elected officials, we welcome voices to chime in. That said, I think that at this point we are going to move to adjourn the meeting. So if someone, and not adjourn the meeting, excuse me, we're going to adjourn with a short break to an executive session. And Mrs. Perry, I need to ask you, I need so that would be resolution 7.02 to go into executive session?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It's on the agenda. Yep, 7.02.
All right. Would someone move?
7.02 is to adjourn, though.
Well, yeah, we amended the agenda. That's why I'm bringing that to your attention. So 7.02 is now a resolution to move into that executive session that was added at the beginning of the meeting for the purpose of talking about a particular employee. And so if someone would move that.
Move it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mr. Grandal,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeJarm,
Yeah.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
and Mrs. Lyons.
Yes.
Okay, folks, is 5 minutes long enough for a break? If we take a 5-minute break and we come back? Okay,
Yep.
folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break and We are out of executive session. And would someone move to adjourn?
Move it.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your evening. Stay safe, stay healthy, folks, and I'll see you next meeting, except for you, Fallon.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, be safe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.